Hi everybody, this is Mr. Nolan, and what I would like to do with you in this video is show you how to use Google Scholar. This is a great tool to find, cite, and write with sources. And full disclosure, before we continue, I want to make it clear that I'm showing you how to use these sources in scientific writing. So this is not true in all disciplines. If you're writing an English paper, they might want you to cite that a little differently than in a history paper, and that might be cited a little differently than in a science paper. So I'm going to show you specifically how to cite for science. So let's first talk about how to find a source. How do we find a good source that we're looking for? Well, let's go to Google Scholar. I'll show you how to get there. One way that you can get there is actually just typing into a search bar. I mean, you can go to Google and you can just type in Google Scholar. That's one way to do it. And the first thing that comes up, there it is Google Scholar. The other way that you can get there is to go to the URL box up here and actually type scholar.google.com. Okay. So here we are in Google Scholar, and we're looking for some sources. Now, the sources you look for, whether you find good sources or not really depends on your use of keywords. So keywords are words that are tagged in the source in order to help search engines such as Google Scholar to find them. So they're actually kind of tagged in the articles. So for instance, let's say that I'm trying to figure out how nitrates, which is a chemical in water, affect snails and algae in aquatic ecosystems. Now, what you would not do is type in a full sentence or question into the search bar, because when you add all those prepositions and articles and extra words, it kind of confuses Google Scholar, because now it's trying to sort of lump some of those things in together. So the best way to look for this is to just write something like, so let's say snails, nitrates, or nitrate, algae, and aquatic, right? That was our original question that I kind of just made up. How are snails, nitrates, and algae sort of going to affect each other? So maybe you're doing research on that and you want to try to figure that out. So these are my keywords: snails, nitrate, algae, and aquatic. Notice I didn't put in too many. I didn't put in 10, just a few. So look at this. The very first one that comes up: effects of snail grazing on algal, that looks like algae, community structure in different nutrient environments. Well, that sounds like exactly what I'm looking for. And by the way, if it's not, maybe try to remove a word, or maybe try to, you could maybe add a word, or if you don't find anything with algae, maybe you can try algal, maybe a word that's kind of related. But here, I want to show you, all right, now that we've found some sources, what are we really looking at here? And maybe I'll zoom in so you can see a little bit better. Okay, so what we have here is with each little entry here, this is something that Google Scholar has found. And then over here, if there's a link, this little link here, this is actually a link to the document itself. So first, let's just look at the link over here. If we click on this link to the website, you can see that this blue is the title. What's in green down here is referring to the citation. You can see some authors right away. It gives you a little sample from inside the article. And then there's some links down here that we'll look at in a minute. So first, let's just click on the title. And when we click on the title, it takes us to the website where that document lives, where it's located. You will usually find what's called an abstract. Now, an abstract is just a summary of the article. It's one paragraph. Sometimes it's a couple, but usually it's just one. And this is a summary of the paragraph. These are notoriously difficult to read, and that's because an author is trying to jam a lot of information into just one little paragraph to give you an idea of what they found. They're always a little difficult to read. You have to be patient when you're reading abstracts, because you have to learn, how do I pull out information from that? So that's a whole separate skill that we don't really have time to go into in this video. But the abstract is really the go-to. That's the place to go to if you're just trying to get an idea of what this article is about. But what I also want to show you is if you click on the link over here, if there is a link, you'll notice they don't all have links. Some are empty. But if you click a link over here, what you'll find is that this is actually going to take us to the document itself. So the first link was where the website where the document was located, and this is the actual document. So you can see it's got the graphs here that you can look at and analyze if you're trying to understand what you're trying to read, all kinds of graphs. Oh, this is actually a gold mine right here. At the end of this paper, they will usually include a works cited section, and you can actually go find the work found in those works cited sections, in those works, and you can actually find even more information. But again, you'll notice in this document, it starts off with the abstract. That's the same abstract that we saw a minute ago in that website. So this is the actual document if you wanted to look at the actual document, intro, the methods and all these different parts. The last thing that I want to show you here is how to use Google Scholar to do a citation. Some people use EasyBib. I am not a fan of EasyBib. It's a little cumbersome and I just don't really like the way that it works. So what you can do is if you find this little pair of quotes right here, if you click on that, this is one of my very favorite things about Google Scholar. As soon as you click on that, I'll zoom out a little, you get a whole big list of the 5 most common ways to cite things. MLA and APA are the ones that are most commonly used. You can use whichever one you feel most comfortable with. Depending on your instructor and depending on what they want you to use. But I'm an APA fan myself. What's great about this, if you just double click on it, it'll highlight it, right click, copy, or you can control copy. And then now you can go into a document, maybe your works cited page, and you can paste it directly into your document. And there it is. Now you've got your actual source, and you can do an InText citation as well. So that's how to use Google Scholar to dig up some resources. This is a wonderful resource. I do want to show you before I go how to cite a work in text. So I'm going to jump over here and show you how to cite this in text. Again, I'll zoom in a little bit. So anytime that you have works cited in a scientific paper, you should also have in-text citations. And I'll show you a few examples of those just so you know what they look like. Here are a few made-up examples. These aren't real. I just kind of made them up. But there's a few different ways to use in-text citation. The whole idea here is when you put a claim out there, a scientific claim, you should immediately, right away, tell, this is where I got the claim. This is where I found this. And the best way to do this is with an in-text citation, and in-text citations usually don't have a direct quote. You're going to paraphrase, don't directly quote. So here's a few examples. One way to word it is like so. According to Royola, a made-up author, nitrates influence the algae and aquatic plants in an ecosystem. So Royola, there's the author right there, and then here's the year in parentheses. You don't always have to have parentheses, but when you're doing an in-text citation, you need the author or authors, and the year that it was published. That's how you do an in-text citation. You include it in the sentence where you pointed out that information. Here's another way to put it. Just state the claim, nitrates have been shown to affect algae and aquatic plants and ecosystems, and then put the in-text citation in parentheses. There we go. Author, year. Another way to do this is to say, according to work done by Royola in 2013. Notice there's no parentheses there, but I still included the author and the year. So you can use an in-text citation for the same source a couple of times. You don't just have to use it once. But any time that you use an in-text citation, you absolutely have to include that in a work cited. And the generic way to do that, this is APA, is to do author last name, first initials, year, title of work, name of publication, like the journal, issue, number, page numbers. That's sort of the generic way to do that. And then down here I've sort of got an example of what that looks like. It is very valuable. It's a very valuable resource to be able to do a works cited that's linked up to all of the in-text citations that you've put in your paper. Just make sure that as you go through, you're including the author and the year. And your teacher might ask you to cite things a little differently. Like I said, this is for science that I'm pointing out to you. So this is generally how a science teacher would accept it, but for other teachers, they might not quite accept it. But, so I hope that this video was helpful for figuring out how to use Google Scholar to find, cite, and to write with sources.